Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue, and happy Thanksgiving from us here at the Drive Pink Dialogue. And we wanted to do a special episode for Thanksgiving, talking about what we are thankful for. Now, Sor, my dear friend and co-host, is in his travels abroad. He's on vacation right now, celebrating some things that are going on in his life, and so we aren't able to do an episode. And also, by the way, I should mention that this is the day before Thanksgiving and the day before this comes out. So we kind of worked together to amalgamate an episode, and this will be a little bit of a Frankenstein podcast, but we're going to ride through it and hopefully talk about everything going on with Inter Miami and do some thankful conversations. And so that's where we're going to start. I am going to spend this episode, at least the second half of this episode, talking about the roster situation. For those that don't know, to the day I'm recording this, but yesterday for you guys, Wednesday, November 26th, was roster deadline day for all of the teams that didn't make it to the conference finals. And so if Inter Miami had been eliminated, a lot of those decisions that I'm going to talk about in the second half would have been done today. So I thought, even though we're in the brink of playing, we're on the brink of playing in the conference finals, it's worth at least taking a look at who is going to be, who has a decision to be made. Let's put it that way. So we're going to do that in the second half. Inter Miami is also seemingly on the verge of signing a young 26-year-old right back named Facundo Mura. And I'll talk a little bit more about him. Some Timo Werner rumors out of Germany and some preseason rumors as well. So that'll be the second half of the episode. But I wanted to start with just a Thanksgiving-themed thankfulness episode. We're not going to do any preview for Inter Miami and NYCFC tonight or today. But what I will say is that by the time you're listening to this, I'll have been on the Battered MLS channel with Danny and Chris, who do the Battered Herons, to talk about the NYCFC game. So if you want that preview, you can find it over there. And they're also going to join this episode, hopefully, to talk about some things that they're thankful for. So let's kick it off. Sor and I, a couple things that we're just thankful for at Inter Miami. Happy Thanksgiving, Sor. What is one thing you are thankful for?
Happy Thanksgiving, Scotty. We have made it 2 Thanksgivings in a row, so I'm glad we're able to do this again. And at the top, the one thing I'm finally thankful for is Inter Miami finding its own brand of football by the end of the season. I think the season has been defined by ups and downs, us liking how Javier Mascherano started the season, then criticizing for his defensive approach. I think it was an identity-finding season for large parts, which frustrated a lot of Inter Miami fans. But over the last 6-7 weeks, Inter Miami seems to have finally peaked and discovered their brand of football. The fearless, scary brand of offensive football that we wanted this team to play. And I think over the last few games in the playoffs, that has been on display. And that, for me, is exactly how this Inter Miami team should be set up. And I am so thankful that at least before the end of the season, we get to see this. And hopefully we can carry this form into the MLS Cup final and win that.
What did I always say? Intimidate and overwhelm. And I know there was a third one in there, but that's where they're at right now. Suffocate. Thank you.
Yeah.
And this team right now feels suffocating. It feels overwhelming. And if you are a very good team in Cincinnati, you just played a playoff game at home in your house and were overwhelmed, and then you were suffocated. And the entire experience was intimidating. Moving forward, they're going to play NYCFC and whoever else they play. And it's that exact brand of football that you're talking about that makes this team so exciting. It took us a while to get here, but now that we're here at the perfect time, and it's beautiful to watch. So I totally agree with you. It's a great thing to be thankful for.
Better late than never.
I'm sure we're going to get into some bigger things, but I want to say that I'm very thankful for both Noah Allen and Ian Frey. This journey with Lionel Messi and friends and reshaping the roster in that image, the fact that we've had kids out of the academy come through and stay with this team from a talent level perspective and make it better and are here in the biggest moments actively participating in this team and being a huge part of the success that they're finding right now, that is incredible. I think there's clearly a world where all of the kids could have gotten left behind, but they didn't. And it's a credit to the kids out of the academy in South Florida soccer that they were able to step up and grow with this team. And so now that we're in this amazing moment, they get to be a part of this. And I think it really helps connect South Florida soccer and the identity of sort of the people of the community into this team. And so those are the two right now that are a huge part of it. Obviously, Kramaski, obviously David Ruiz have all been a part of this journey. But those two right now being such huge pieces, I'm super thankful that they get to represent all of us from South Florida.
Yeah, I think the academy is the most important thread of a club's fabric. You understand the health of a club by how well the academy is doing. And Inter Miami in the last few years has been performing really well in bringing some of those young talents up. Last season, Noah Allen had a bit of a silent breakout because he almost emerged onto the scene towards the end of the season. And this season, we've had Ian Frey come out, have a breakout season. Of course, Kramaski has had the opportunity to go abroad as well. So it's been really wonderful to watch some of these young players come up and stamp their authority in the starting 11. The ceiling of this team is so high, the talent level is so high that you said it very rightly that some of the academy graduates might get left behind. And you wouldn't fault the coaching staff for doing that because we are surrounded by some immensely talented players. But the fact that we have Ian Frey, Noah Allen performing at exactly that talent level, they haven't fallen by the wayside, is, I think, a huge testament to how well we've handled their progress. And I hope that continues over the next few years as well, because that for me is going to define what Inter Miami's future looks like after Messi. But something very important to be thankful for, and we should definitely mention the academy and those two who are carrying the banner for the academy right now.
And even more specifically for Ian Frey, the fact that he's been healthy all year, and we've
Yeah.
seen so many tidbits and sparks and flashes of what he could be. But this year, for him to be fully healthy and to establish himself as a full professional and a key part of this team and a representative of all of us from South Florida, like, also wanted to say thankful for that because it hasn't always been so easy.
Absolutely.
All right, what you got?
My turn. I am thankful for having gone through the experience of the Club World Cup. I don't know as an Inter Miami fan if that's ever going to happen again. For me, that was potentially the highlight of the season thus far. I think there's more to come, but that was such a brilliant, 4 weeks. We had zero expectations of how the Inter Miami team was going to do. We didn't know what we would expect from some of the teams that we were playing. And I thought you and I had some really good moments together on the podcast as well, where we got to talk about some international teams, new teams that we would never talk about normally, talk about new players, and just the overall experience of how Inter Miami performed and the pride with which we could talk about our team in that tournament was phenomenal. And despite the fact that it ended with a 4-0 loss to PSG, I think that still was a very good performance for what it was worth. And I thought Inter Miami gave the perfect account for themselves and represented the MLS exactly how they should have, with their heads held high and performing at a really high level. So very thankful for that experience. I don't know if that ever happens in our Inter Miami history again. But that was so fun. It almost felt like a mini World Cup of sorts. It was a festival to celebrate.
It was a World Cup, right? Let's
Yeah.
be fair. That's what it was. No, it was. This is an incredible one, Soren. It was not one that I was thinking of. So thank you for bringing it to the table. But man, that was so exciting and fun to be a part of. And it's one thing, I'm sure we would have watched it and paid attention and whatever, but to be in it and to have the opening game and to have our team not just be an active participant for us to sort of deep dive and do it not just for the channel, but just as fans, for them to actually be successful there. And that game against Porto is one of the most fun experiences I've ever had as a soccer fan. And even Palmeiras, like for 80 minutes, that was as high as I've been as an Inter Miami fan. So, and even the Al Ali game, like we came into that game, not in the first half an hour of that game, we maybe looked like we weren't going to belong at that tournament. And then from everything they did at halftime through the rest of the tournament, it was an incredible experience, and one that very few American soccer fans are ever going to have the opportunity to have. And we got that, not just as MLS, but as Inter Miami fans. Like, our team got to be a participant. And by the way, Seattle and LAFC, I'm sure they had fun being a part of it, but they didn't get the moments that we got. And so, incredible. You're absolutely right.
No, I think who would have thought going into that tournament that we'd be disappointed drawing against Al Ahly, the champions of Africa, and then we'd be disappointed, not just disappointed, fuming after that draw against Palmeiras. Like, who would have thought? So the fact that we actually got to a point where that was our assessment from that tournament is just brilliant, and honestly, package that in a bottle because it was lightning, that experience. And again, have to be grateful for those moments.
I think maybe we should do an episode in the off season of like reliving that, because now that we're talking about it right now, it has me feeling all types of ways. It was
Giddy.
a lot of fun. Yeah. I am grateful for Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets. They are so talented. And what I will say is they came at the exact same time as Messi. And so maybe we don't always quite recognize their transformational ability because it was sort of wrapped in this Messi transformation. But they are phenomenal talents, and we're going to recognize what they were providing next year when it's not a part of this. And for them to come to Inter Miami and join our club and spend their last 2.5 years of their professional careers, these total unicorns at Inter Miami, and us getting to watch them game in and game out, has been an absolute joy and pleasure. And I am unbelievably grateful that we've had the opportunity.
There would be no better way to end the season and also end their careers than with the trophy. I think what they've contributed to the club, they deserve it, because if they end without a trophy, their time at Inter Miami wouldn't necessarily be justified or vindicated. I think that trophy would be a vindication of what their, as you said, transformative effect in this team has been. So I think it's only fair that they end on a high with the MLS Cup. They've been brilliant. I think it's been an absolute privilege watching them play. This season, both of them have performed at a level where we think, why are they even retiring? I still think Sergio Busquets can continue to play for another year, maybe in a different role, maybe in a reduced role, but still can play another year. Jordi Alba can definitely play for another year, maybe 2 years. So it's sad that we're seeing them go. I'm just glad that it doesn't happen, like their retirement announcement doesn't happen after the season's ended. We already know it's going to end, so we can cherish the moments that they're on the field. And then I also want to, maybe not firing the cannon a little too early, but I think package Suarez into that, because we don't know what his future is. But I am grateful for that, for whatever he's done. And if we're talking about Sergio Busquets, Alba, Suarez has also been transformational on this team. His performances last season were absolutely phenomenal. This season, for whatever it's worth, I think he's been cursed by his own level of performances, because repeating that was practically impossible, but he still contributed immensely this season. So I want to say I'm thankful for Suarez as well. So all the superstars, the Barcelona boys as we call them, even though now they're Inter Miami boys, I'm very, very grateful for how they've, shaped up this entire short period of Inter Miami's history.
Think about what Jordi Alba provides from that left side, whipping balls in. You've never, and you've watched the Premier League, you've watched the highest levels of the game, the World Cup and everything, and you've never seen anyone do that. And we got to see it for our team. And you think about Busquets and the way he handles the ball in the midfield, And the way guys come and press him as if they're going to do something, and he makes them look silly. Again, you can watch the Premier League, you can watch the World Cup, you can watch the highest levels of this game and not see that, because these guys are true unicorns. And so the fact that we got to watch it week in and week out, and yes, Suarez too. And if this ends up being the last few games we see of Luis Suarez, then absolutely throw him in as well. Some of the body contortions he was able to put on display to put the ball in the back of the net over the last year and a half or 2 years has been an absolute joy. So we got to see something we would not have seen if they had never come to Inter Miami, and that is incredible.
I'm just glad Suarez is a footballer and not a ballerina. But yeah, I think that's a good one.
I think he might be a good ballerina, actually. It's just not as majestic on his
Graceful.
feet. The hips don't lie, man. What else you got?
All right, I think this might be my last one, unless I can think of a few more, which I'm sure I can. But we didn't say Messi, and that's because I think there's a whole section that should be dedicated to him. We can't even talk about it in words, man. He is just what an absolute player. He's broken every single record that there is to break in the world of football. For Inter Miami, he's been performing at a level that is godly. I don't think we can actually deep how impactful and how crazy the numbers he's putting are. And like he's doing things on the pitch that have seemed normal for the longest time, but they're not. Just because he does it on a regular basis doesn't mean that that's the normality, right? We continuously talk about the likes of Son, the likes of Buanga, how they've transformed. Mueller coming in as well and having a good season, changing the nature of Vancouver's season. But Messi has surpassed everything that those players have put forth. Like he's doubling some of those numbers that those players are putting in. We're commending them for that. So I can keep going on this, but the fact that Lionel Messi continues to play is brilliant, and I'm so thankful for him. So thankful for him.
He absolutely deserves his own section, and so thank you for bringing him up. None of this would be possible. There is no Jordi Alba or Sergio Busquets or Club World Cup or, us thinking that it's amazing that the academy kids were able to step up to this level. They would just be the stars of an MLS team, not stars of an MLS championship, hopefully team, or at least a top tier MLS team, keeping up with some of the greatest players in the world. Like all of this is because Lionel Messi decided to come to Inter Miami. And so absolutely incredibly thankful for that. But also, I think this is the best he's ever played at Inter Miami right now. What he's done in his last 10 games or 12 games or whatever it is, as good as he was at the Leagues Cup, as good as he's been at various points in his Inter Miami career, and he's always been good, but what he's done recently at the right time, in the right moment, in the biggest moments, has been the best we've seen from him, and it is an absolute joy. And also everything we said about Busquets and Alba and Suarez, like we would never see these things happen live or like watching it week after week after week if it wasn't for him, because there is no other player that will ever be able to replicate what he does. And so I feel like my ability to call myself a fan of this sport is more complete because I got to watch this guy week in and week out.
No, I think you've summed it brilliantly, so I don't want to add too much to that, but my goodness, I'm glad every single day that Lionel Messi chose Inter Miami's pink over any other team, and let's enjoy him while he continues to perform at this level.
Yeah, one last thing I want to be thankful for, or that I am thankful for. This is going to come out on Thanksgiving. We're about to play NYCFC in a couple days. But in this moment right now, I am just proud and happy to be an Inter Miami fan. And I know sometimes we get too deep in the weeds and we can get frustrated and this performance can be subpar, or, we don't show up for this huge game or whatever. But like in this moment, they are showing up, they're playing really well, and they've done something they've never done before. And as an Inter Miami fan, I am just happy and proud and thankful. And I did want to acknowledge that.
And add to that the fact that we get to do this every single time Inter Miami plays, the fact that we get to get on the mic and talk our heads off, even though we may not make any sense to some people. I'm just thankful that we're able to do that. And without getting more soppy, thank you for every single one who tunes in to watch us talk about Inter Miami, because you're the ones who make this the best time ever. So thank you guys, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, and also to you, Sor. I'm very thankful that you agreed to do this with me, and I think it's been a lot of fun ever since. Any final thoughts, man, before we head out for the holiday?
No, as always, two more games. Let's hope Inter Miami can win both those games, and then we'll be a lot more thankful for a lot more things. And there can be a whole episode dedicated to that. So, two more games, man. Let's strap in. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
So, Chris, what is something you're thankful for?
One of the things I'm thankful for is an Ian Frey injury-less season. I mean, even though unfortunately he suffered an injury just recently against Jamaica, but it doesn't seem to be too serious. You know, we come back from last year where he had a really bad injury, or was it 2 years ago, I believe, and that sucked for him as a player. So I'm just happy that this year it's been positive for Ian Frey in terms of injuries or lack thereof.
Yeah, for him to show us the flashes and the potential and the sparks over the last couple of years, and then for it to be taken away, very tough on him. But also, we as fans want to see him blossom, and he got to do that this year. So I think that's absolutely an incredible thing, and I think that's a great one, man. What about you, Danny? What you got?
I'm going to say one that some people might roll their eyes at, but I'm thankful for Messi. I'm thankful that we are one of the 3 clubs in the world that get to enjoy him week in and week out, that we are watching prime Messi, well, not prime Messi, but the way he's been playing recently feels like prime Messi. And the fact that he's still with us for another year or two. So, like I said, I know it's very obvious. I know some people might roll their eyes, but man, I'm thankful. I'm thankful. I said it on our show just a couple of days ago. If we don't win the trophy, I understand why it's considered a failure. And the whole Messi experiment from the outside looking in is a failure. And I get all that, and I'll be upset and sad, whatever. But man, like, you can't take the fact that you're witnessing Messi, and we're talking Messi on a weekly basis, for granted. So I am very thankful that we have Lionel Messi.
Do you guys think he's in the best form he's been in at Inter Miami over the past 10, 12,
Absolutely.
15 games?
Oh, yeah. Look at the numbers that he's putting up. What was it, 22 goal contributions in the last 25? Like, it's ridiculous what he's doing.
Yeah, it lasted
At his
7
age.
games, something like that. Yeah. We thought he was amazing when he showed up for that Leagues Cup run and the magic and all of that. But again, I think we're seeing the very best of what he's been at Inter Miami right now, and I agree with you, man. That's awesome. One of the things I'm thankful for is Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets. They came as part of this Messi magic moment, and it all felt wrapped in and around Lionel Messi. But for the first time, they're going to be leaving, and we get to appreciate them as just who they are. And I think next year we're going to see everything they really brought once it's not there anymore. So to have those guys also spend a portion of their career here, I think has been awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'll give you, I don't know if do you want me to bring up another thing I'm thankful for here, Scotty?
Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing, but I think I'm going to piggyback off of what you said. I'm thankful for having Noah Allen and Yannick Bright, because those two guys are going to piggyback off of players like Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets who are leaving. So I'm thankful to have them, because I know Yannick Bright's going to leave he's still going to make a hell of a difference. He's not Sergio Busquets, and Noah Allen is not Jordi Alba, but they've learned from the best. And I feel like having those guys stick around is going to be a lot more beneficial than what people imagine it to be.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
If I'm going to throw out a second thing that I'm thankful for, this one might not have people rolling their eyes, but Mascherano, I feel like he's been maturing as a coach throughout the season. Like, we are hesitant to give him too much credit, because I feel like sometimes the things that he does, almost like, well, you got to, right? This person's injured, so you have to play this person, so on and so forth. but it feels like he's been doing a better job of just managing over the last month or so. And I feel like it all was punctuated by last week's game where Luis Suarez was available. You could start him again. And he said, no, you know what? Luis Suarez is going to come off the bench. Ian Frey, as much as we killed him for starting Cello for so long, Ian Frey is now the regular starter when he's healthy. Noah Allen is starting over Lujan. Like, I feel like it was a rough first go, and it's been a lot of bumpy roads along the way, but I feel like he's gotten better. My thing with Mascherano was I didn't want an inexperienced coach to come and have his learning pains with a win now team. That was my whole gripe. Because all young coaches are going to have, like every coach, when they first start off, I'm sure they weren't all great. I'm sure Pep and everybody had their growing pains. And so Mascherano was bound to have them. I just didn't think that he should have them, or we should hire somebody that's going to have those with a team that's expected to win so many trophies immediately. But it is what it is. We got him. He's had his growing pains, but I feel like he's maturing as a coach. And I'm thankful for it, because I think that maybe we got something. You know, we ended up sticking with him throughout this year. It was rough at times, but maybe he keeps improving, and maybe he ends up being a good coach in the long run. So I'm thankful for the fact that it looks like he is maturing as a coach.
He's at his best right now that we've seen.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
even after this last game with the Silvetti Suarez situation, I think that's like as high of a stock as he's had all year, and it's the right time for that, for sure. Speaking of Silvetti, I'm grateful that the club on the last day of the window said, we have an extra international roster slot and we have a U22 spot. Let's just go find some super talented young kid and pull the trigger, because they didn't have a natural fit for this kid. He's a winger. They played a 4-4-2. He didn't really have a natural position or role to fill in. But they had the spot and they had the money for it, and they said, let's go pull the trigger now, not wait till the offseason, not potentially lose him, not wait till next year. Let's go get the reinforcement now. And, man, where would we be without him right now, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I mean, we'd still have Luis Suarez up top, and he does contribute heavily to the team, but would he contribute in the same way? He's been lacking in goal scoring this year, so who knows?
I'm of the mindset that Luis Suarez, we still would have won these last two games with the elimination game and this past week with Suarez on the pitch. I just think that defensively, the fact that Jordi Alba doesn't have as much responsibility going up that left flank, now Svetti's kind of filling in that role, I feel like that has contributed to the help defensively. Sam Surridge sucking also contributed to the fact that we had those 2 clean sheets. But I do think that Svetti helps a lot on the defensive end, even though you don't see it, but I feel like tactically it ends up helping us in the long run. And I think that does contribute, but I think we win those games with Luis Suarez anyway. So, but I am extremely happy that we have this young 19-year-old wonder kid that, who knows, he might end up, if he ends up at the trajectory, I mean, I know it's a very, very small sample size, but if that small sample size keeps going, he's going to be quite the transfer fee.
I didn't even mean that in like a Luis Suarez part of the conversation. Just
No,
that,
it's Chris. Chris is a horrible person.
and I will say I'm a little nervous about how excited I'm getting about this kid, because he's so young and he's so inexperienced. But yeah, you watch him, and just like you said, like you can see the special traits that could be really amazing. I don't know about you guys, but I think next year, Messi number 1 and then Silvetti number 2, and that's who you build the team around, is those 2 kids, because
I could see that.
yeah, I'd love to see that. One last one, and I want to ask you guys, because listen, I'm a Broward boy. You guys are South, Miami.
Very
New
tough.
stadium. You guys, I mean, I'm excited for the new stadium. I'm gonna go opening day and all that stuff, but you guys are the season ticket holders. You guys are going to have it in your own backyard, or much closer now. Any thankfulness there? Any thoughts about Miami Freedom Park and being happy about it?
I mean, I'm gonna be a pig and bleep, really, because it's 20-30 minutes away from me, and I speed like a demon, so I probably get there in 15. Or maybe I'll take the metro. Who knows? That's what I was actually thinking. But yeah, I was actually, that's what one of the things I'm super thankful for is finally being able to get the stadium down in Miami-Dade. It looks like a beautiful stadium. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Danny?
One thing that I'm not thankful for is the fact that I'm not going to be sitting next to Chris anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we are
it's gonna
not sitting
suck.
together anymore. So I think that really sucks. But yeah, being a lot closer to the house, I'll probably be making it to weekday games now also. Because before, if it was a weekday game, chances are I wasn't going. So I can make it to obviously the weekday games also now. But yeah, I'm really thankful for the stadium. Obviously, it was expensive. The ticket prices were more or less what we expected. But I'm very excited. I've grown tired of those hour-long drives, and if traffic is rough, hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. So I'm very thankful that it's going to be close by.
Does that mean you're going to start going to Open Cup games too? It's only 20 minutes away.
Yes, I might. Well, you know what? They make us buy separate tickets for that, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
that's
so
right.
hard to sign up for our season tickets already.
Yeah.
But if they
Okay.
play at Miami FC, I'll go because that's even closer to my house and it's
Oh my
cheaper.
goodness. Absolutely.
I will say I always love the Open Cup games because you can get good tickets for like $11.
Yep.
You can.
That was one thing I was thankful for back in 2022, 23.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, so thank you again to Soar. Thank you again to Danny and Chris for coming on and talking about that. I think it's such an interesting point in Inter Miami's time as a club, at this particular moment, that it's interesting to be thankful for, and I think spend a minute to appreciate where we're at in this very moment. So thank you all for coming on and being a part of that, and I really appreciate it. A couple things. We did a small exercise like this last season. When Thanksgiving rolled around, we spent 5 minutes at the end of our episode talking about the things we were thankful for, and it was very impromptu. I think we planned it midway through as we were recording live, and kind of just texted him on the side, and said, "Hey, let's just talk about a few things that we're thankful for." And so when we got there, we kind of just went off the cuff. But I thought it would be interesting to sort of go back and think about some of the things we're interested in, and how maybe what we were thankful for then is a little bit different than what we were thankful for now. Last year, we started with the Supporter Shield and how we were thankful to have achieved that, and that even though we didn't win the MLS Cup and had been eliminated by Atlanta and come short in a couple of the competitions we wanted to last year, to leave that season with something tangible to hold on to, not just the Supporter Shield, but the points record. That was something we were pretty proud of in that moment. We talked about all the players. Well, if you'll remember, this is right after Javier Mascherano had been hired, and so we did a little bit of a conversation about Tata Martino and also all the players he brought with him. And if you remember, when Tata arrived, aside from Messi and friends, he was intimately involved in all of the player recruitment and responsibilities that go with trying to add talent to the roster. And so a lot of the players that they brought in were linked to Tata Martino. Guys like Diego Gomez and Julian Gressel were two that we mentioned, but there's a lot more. So we talked about that. We talked about what a fine Yannick Bright was in the Super Draft and how great it was to watch his explosion last season. And then we talked about being thankful for the ownership group for being ambitious, and how not every ownership group is as ambitious, and some are holding the league back maybe in certain ways, and for Inter Miami to be pushing towards the future, and for us to have owners that want to push towards the future as opposed to hold the league back or stay static. I think we were really appreciative of that. And so a lot of those things still stand. A lot of the players that have been brought in, obviously, you guys know we're huge fans of Yannick Bright, the owners still being those that are pushing the envelope of what this league could be. And, of course, the accomplishments that we accomplished over the last couple of years, and certainly since we've been doing the Driving Dialogue, I think are all still true and all thankful for. And so even we're all so thankful for. So even though we didn't mention those maybe in this segment, I do want to reiterate that those were all and still are things that we're thankful for. Okay, let's get to roster decisions because it is that time of year. Again, if Inter Miami had not made the conference finals, right, there's 4 teams left. Every other team had to submit their roster decisions by the 26th, the day before Thanksgiving. And so on your timelines yesterday, you may have seen a bunch of teams announcing players not being kept, contract options not being either fulfilled or accepted, loan decisions on whether to buy a player or not being decided, whether they're gonna spend the fee to bring a player in or not, send the player back on loan. That happened across the league, and it would have happened for Inter Miami as well if they hadn't have progressed into the conference finals. So what I thought I would do is try and talk about some of the decisions Inter Miami is going to have to make. And listen, when your season ends, whether you win the MLS Cup or if you lose this weekend, you're going to then have to make that decision within the next few days. And so for the Herons, these decisions, they're either going to be happening in the next week or in the next 2 weeks. And so this is maybe a little bit of a preview. In past seasons, when Inter Miami has either missed the playoffs or eliminated in the first round, they've had 3 to 4 weeks before they've actually had to submit these roster decisions. And so it can be quite some time between the end of the season and the final sort of time we get to see these guys and when they actually have to make these decisions. It's not going to be the case this year. So I thought at least having the decisions to be made as a primer on the top of your head so that when that time comes, we can have the proper context and understanding on how to talk about these guys. That would be, I think, helpful. And so I'm not going to talk about what decisions should be made. Maybe we can talk about what I expect to happen if I think there's an obvious answer, or at least what the decision is on both sides. But I think it's interesting to know what's sort of on the horizon for Inter Miami. And again, I hope this doesn't take away from what is coming up this weekend, because that is the most important thing. And so again, I don't want to get too into the weeds on what they should do or put any sort of value judgment, but just sort of broadly talking about it. And then I think it will set up some of our further conversations about Facundo, Mura, and some of these other guys. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, let's start at the top of the roster. Inter Miami this season had 3 DPs, Lionel Messi, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba. Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba are retiring. Lionel Messi signed a new contract, so he will be a designated player coming up next season. And we fully expect him to be joined by Rodrigo de Paul. Now, I've put him in the DP category. Technically, he is on loan with an option to buy, but he's coming to Inter Miami. This was... The only reason this wasn't a full purchase is because they needed to work around the designated player limits rule and satisfy Atletico Madrid and satisfy Rodrigo de Paul. But everyone wants this to happen, and regardless of if we feel like Rodrigo de Paul has necessarily lived up to that contract, it's still going to go through. So next season, Inter Miami has 2 designated players locked in Lionel Messi and Rodrigo de Paul. And they have 3 U22 players returning. Toto Aviles, Talasco Segovia, and Matteo Silvetti are all on U22 contracts, and that would fill up their quota if they go with that 3-3 structure that they did this season. I'll remind everyone you can go with a 2DP 4 U22 structure if you want. You actually get some allocation money on top of that if you choose that, or you can go with 3 DPs and 3 U22s if that's the path you'd rather go down. So right now, Inter Miami has 1 DP spot and 0 U22 spots available. Now, Toto Aviles obviously didn't have the role he wanted this year. And Talasco Segovia, we've heard, may be of interest to clubs in Europe, particularly in Spain. So if a good offer comes in for those guys, I think they've done what we've asked of them at Inter Miami. And if they can go on and take the next step in their career, I would be very happy for them. Matteo Silvetti will absolutely 100% be back next year, and I hope, well, I'm afraid to get too high on the kid, but I'm afraid it's happening anyways. Hopefully going to be one of the cornerstone pieces, but he will be back. And as far as talking about this roster deadline, those three will be locked in as the U22s. Other players with guaranteed contracts for next season, Oscar Stadi, if you guys remember, he signed that contract extension back in May, about 6 or 7 weeks after he had taken over the number one job. So he will be back next year. We do not know the finances of that deal for next year. This season, it was quite hefty. Maybe they signed it and gave him the bigger contract this year so that he could take backup money next year and they could rework it. But there's also the possibility they're giving him a similar amount of money next year as they did this year. And if that's the case, he's going to be on big money and he's going to at least be in the conversation to be the goalkeeper one. Yannick Bright signed his new contract a couple months ago. David Ruiz under contract. Noah Allen also got his new contract a couple months ago. Santi Morales and Israel Boatwright and Tyler Hall, a couple of the young kids that are under contract for next year. And then the other two senior players that are under contract that Inter Miami had to bring in through the transfer portal, and so they have transfer market, are Maxi Falcone and Gonzalo Lujan. Both players, I think Maxi Falcone is on a pretty nice contract, team-friendly contract. Gonzalo Lujan, not so much, especially if he's not going to be a starter. It's a pretty tough contract to have. So those two guys under contract for next season. And as far as the roster decisions, there's no decision to be made. So from that point of view, if we include Rodrigo de Paul, that's Inter Miami having 14 players under contract, if I'm counting correctly. And then they have 2 players under what are just team options. Fafa Picault, who you would imagine would not have that activated based on what his situation in Inter Miami was this season, quite frankly. But they do have the option, and that is a decision they'll have to make. And then Will Yarbrough, the third-string goalkeeper that they signed in the spring, also a team option. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the type of situation where they deny his option, but then continue talking with him over the course of the winter, and we might see him back. Maybe they'll accept his option. It's not a ton of money, and you do need a third-string goalkeeper. So someone to keep in mind, but ultimately not hugely impactful. The big decisions, though, come with the out-of-contract players and the loan options. First off, the out-of-contract players. As we speak, Luis Suarez is out of contract. Conflicting reports about if he's got a contract for next season. Maybe that contract implies that he'll have a lesser role. That's been on the table for a while. He hasn't started the last 2 playoff games. Is that going to change anything about his future at Inter Miami? I think that's an interesting conversation for another day, but for right now, it's not one I want to have. Ian Frey, also out of contract this winter. We've heard he's going to have interest from clubs in Europe, whether they are ready to pull the trigger on a deal that he likes during their winter, their mid-season window. We'll see, but I think that's certainly possible that plausible, if not even likely, that Ian Frey leaves the club for some team in Europe. I would think that if it's not an exciting step up in his opportunity to go pursue his European dream, then I do think he could be back at Inter Miami next year. But for right now, he'll be out of contract, and I think Inter Miami will maintain communication potentially to bring him back, but that there's going to be some competition this winter, and we'll see. And then the other player is Ryan Saylor. He does not have an option. He's out of contract, and so I would imagine they might keep a communication with him, but for right now, I don't think that makes a huge difference, and it's not a decision they have to make because he will be out of contract without any options. The other player I should mention before we get into the really interesting ones is Tadeo Allende. He is on loan from Celta Vigo, no option to buy, which means he's going to go back to Celta Vigo at the end of this season, and maybe Inter Miami will try and bring him back. Maybe they'll try and negotiate a transfer fee. Maybe he'll have interest from clubs in Germany or Italy or Spain or whatever. And maybe Celta Vigo has a new coach and maybe wants to give him a try. I don't know. But what I will say is to bring him back to Inter Miami would be very tricky. There's a very fine margin to try and make that happen. And so for right now, I think we have to assume that Tadeo Allende will not be back. And again, no decision to be made because there is no option. And I'm sure they'll talk about it with him and his representatives in Celta Vigo, but nothing imminent on that front. The interesting players, and these are the ones we're going to get information on, are Alan Obando. Inter Miami loaned him in from Barcelona SC in Ecuador with an option to buy. I know there was some confusion about his situation, and Atletico Madrid wanted him, and whatever ended up happening there, he's still owned by Barcelona SC in Ecuador. And Inter Miami has a purchase option. Make of that what you will. Rocco Rios Novo, another player, they loaned him in from Lanús in Argentina. He's a player that has an option to buy. Again, I think maybe that's a no-doubter if you don't have the Oscar Ustari contract already on the books for next season. But with it, it becomes more difficult. Do you want to go into next year with Rocco and Ustari as your two goalkeepers? Maybe. But if they want to upgrade on the goalkeeper, if they want to bring in a new goalkeeper, it becomes tough to buy Rocco and still have an Ustari contract on the books. So that one's going to be very interesting, and it's not one I've heard a lot of people talk about. Marcelo Weigand, his loan expires. Inter Miami does have the option to buy him, but well, we'll talk about him more when we talk about Facundo Mura, but based on his role this season and the contract involved and potentially the buy option, I think that one becomes very difficult as well. And the last one is Baltasar Rodriguez. This is, I think, the toughest one, at least in my opinion, because he's clearly a good player. He is 22, which means you can still fit him in under the U22 rules, but you'd have to make that decision now. And what I mean by that is you can't go back to Racing and say, let's loan him again for a year, because at that point he'll no longer be 22 and you wouldn't be able to qualify him as a U22 player. The purchase option, there's some conflicting reports. Some said it was $6.5 million at the time. I've seen more recently that it's $4 million, and maybe that has to do with how many minutes he played. Either way, that would require him to be either a U22 DP or just a full DP. And so is Baltasar good enough to deserve that? Sure. I don't think anyone thinks he's a bad player, but is he quite good enough? Like, I think that's a fair question. If you can go get the next Diego Gomez, like, I think that's, at least worth considering. And then, but beyond that, I think more importantly, it's the injury concern. He's going to end up playing less than 30% of minutes this year for Inter Miami. And the hamstring injuries are the type that recurs frequently, which is what Baltasar was dealing with for much of the season. So that'll be really interesting. Baltasar and his hamstrings are something the club will know, and the club doctors will know much better than any of us will. So we will have to wait and see. But I think those are the big questions. And then that would leave Inter Miami with some room for a DP signing, and they'll have some TAM money to go sign some nice players and fill some holes. But that would be the basis for the roster. And then we can talk about players moving on and stuff, and some new signings come January when they do a lot of that business. But those are the decisions that are going to be made in the next week or two, depending on how far Inter Miami goes in these MLS Cup playoffs. Okay, let's talk about Facundo Mura, because when we last spoke, there was a report from a Flavio Asaro. I think my document auto-corrected his first name. I think it's Flavio Asaro. And I think there was some questions about what his authenticity was in terms of how reliable he was. What I will say is, since then, there's been a report by Germán Garcia Grova, who I think is the gold standard for Argentine transfer rumors, has sort of doubled down on this, that Inter Miami is on the verge of signing Facundo Mura to be a right back for the club next season. Now, There is some talk about him asking Racing Club, and he's a player as of this moment for Racing Club. His contract is expiring next month, so he will be available as a free agent, no transfer fee involved. There's some speculation that he asked for 600,000 from Racing Club. Now, I don't exactly know what that means, because if you look at the Argentine peso, that's not a number that makes sense. So is that $600,000? Is it 600,000 euros? Like, what were they using as a basis for that conversation? I don't know. And it could make a difference, obviously, if it's euros or pounds, then it's more money in terms of US dollars. But let's assume it was US dollars, 600,000 for a right back. That would be the money that you would save by sending Cello back to Boca Juniors. Cello Weigand this year made $743,000 for from the club, which would imply that you'd actually swap those two out and have some money to spare, and that feels like a solid deal. Now, I don't know a ton about Facundo Mura. I did a little bit of research, watched a little bit of highlights, so if you're an expert on Racing Club, like, obviously you will know more than me, and I don't mean to lecture you, but just from my itty bitty research, I think he could be an upgrade. I think he will be more technically sound, both offensively and defensively, than Cello Weigand. He's quick. I wouldn't say he's necessarily as fast as Cello, but maybe is a little bit quicker in tight spaces. But I think what you're going to get is a more technically sound offensive and defensive right back. And I think that would be good for Inter Miami. Now, is he going to get as high forward as a Jordi Alba or as an Ian Frey? I don't think so. I think he's going to be a little bit more conservative. At least I think that's maybe his natural tendency. I do think he's got a good cross, but again, I've only watched a few highlights of him, so take that for what it's worth. He does get goal contributions over the course of a season. This year for Racing, he played just about 1,800 minutes and had 4 goals and an assist, so he gets some goal contributions. He's not like a purely defensive right back like a Gonzalo Lujan when Lujan played for San Lorenzo. In 2024, he actually had 10 goal contributions in 2,300 minutes, 5 goals, 5 assists. So he's a guy that will get some goal contributions. I can imagine him having a similar impact as Ian Frey. Different style, certainly not as long, tall, or fast as Ian Frey, and maybe less of a X factor, but potentially a similar impact. And I think this just takes the Cello Weigand roster spot, if this ends up being the case, where you swap out Cello and his contract, bring in a different right back for a similar contract, and it fills the same niche on the roster. So what does that mean for Ian Frey? I don't think it necessarily precludes Inter Miami from bringing back Ian Frey. Again, I think Frey will have to make his own personal choices about what he wants for his career, and we'll just have to respect that and wait and see how that unfolds. But I don't think this necessarily eliminates the possibility of bringing him back. Mura there's a space for him on the roster. I also think Ian Frey does not have to be locked in at right back in order to play starters-worthy minutes. This season, we saw Sergio Busquets and Rodrigo de Paul lock down a two-man midfield over the course of the second half of the season since Rodrigo de Paul came. But early in the season, it felt like it was going to be Busquets next to either Federico Redondo or Yannick Bright and a couple Kremaski games mixed in. Redondo's not here anymore. Kremaski's not here anymore. Sergio Busquets is retiring. And I think Inter Miami might switch to a 3-man midfield next year. Like, I think that's more plausible than we've ever thought it would have been with Javier Mascherano. And I think if Luis Suarez is either not on the roster or at least committed to a reduced role, I think that becomes even more plausible. So I think that means there would be minutes for Ian, like a lot of minutes for Ian Frey in the midfield. Certainly can maybe beat out Mura for the right back spot, and he can also play center back, and that's not a position Inter Miami should feel entirely comfortable in, especially if a couple guys leave leave the team this winter. And so I think that's another position they're going to be looking for players. So if you have a chance to bring back Ian Frey, I think there's plenty of minutes for him. And I don't think this move precludes that. I think this is really a Cello Weigand replacement. And I think this is probably indicative of the idea that Cello's not going to be bought permanently. So that's it. I will say, Mura, he was a starter. Racing Club brought him in at age 23 to be a starter, age 22 to be a starter for them. In his first year, 2022, he played 3,500 minutes for them. Over the last 2 seasons, he's played a little bit more of a reduced role, 1,800 minutes this season in 2025. It's not bad. Like he's clearly a guy that will play almost every game, maybe start 25 to 35% of games. Clearly a player they trust to put on the field and but maybe not like a locked-in starter like you might expect from a Jordi Alba or something like that. So at Racing Club, that's a nice level. You guys know how I feel about the Argentine players. I think they are generally a little bit overpriced in terms of a transfer fee because Argentina is a hotbed for talent and teams from all over the country, all over the world want to sign players from them. So the value of their transfer fees goes up because of that. And it becomes tough in the MLS with all our roster rules to sort of really find value there. But if you're going to get this kid for free, he's 26. If you're going to get him on a free transfer, I think that's a delightful decision. And so I like this move. If you pair that with some of the things we've heard about potentially a Sergio Reguilon on the left side, I think Inter Miami is going to create a new back line next year. It's not going to be as attack dominant as a line that includes a Jordi Alba and probably not even an Ian Frey, but you got to have good, solid players that play there. And if that allows you to open up the midfield and get another attacker on the field, like that's, perfectly way to balance and structure a team. So that is it for Facundo Mura. I like the signing. Let me just put it that way. I think it's interesting. And maybe one day we'll grow to love it. A couple of things I want to mention. Timo Werner, report out of Bild, which is a German outlet, that Timo Werner is interested in Inter Miami. I have no idea if that's a two-way interest or if he's just trying to get something out there. This is a guy that's played for Tottenham, Chelsea, RB Leipzig. He's a very good presser. He the stigma of him is that he was bad at finishing, but that he had almost everything else you could want from a striker in terms of his athleticism, his ability to do the dirty work defensively, pressing, ranginess, athleticism. It's just he wasn't good at finishing, which of course you want as a striker. But if you think about it at the MLS level and you start to think about how that could work, like it gets pretty exciting. You could imagine next season a front line that includes Lionel Messi on the right, Timo Werner up top, and Matteo Salvetti on the left. All of a sudden, you got a lot of goals in there. You're going to get a lot of opportunities if you're Salvetti and if you're Werner through just the play of Lionel Messi and the gravity he attracts and the vision he has to be able to push his teammates into good spots. Like all those things are great. So I actually kind of love this profile of player. And I know the reputation is not great, but that's a reputation he has at the Premier League level. I think he could easily replicate what we've gotten from Tadeo Allende at a much higher level, and do all the other work at a higher level and maybe score a few more of those goals as well. So I kind of love the connection. It feels realistic to me. I would imagine he'd come in as a DP. He has long been linked to the New York Red Bulls because of the Red Bulls setup, but maybe one of the reasons that hasn't happened is because he doesn't want to go to the Red Bulls. He wants to go somewhere else in MLS, and maybe that could be Inter Miami. So that's just a report that came out. I thought I'd mention it. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is, again, every year in Inter Miami history, the season has been over at this point. And so it's cool and unique and fun that we get to continue talking about the team playing a game this weekend and all of the stakes that are in front of us. But there's a lot of off-season work that generally gets done around this time that Inter Miami does and is doing right now that we just considered off-season work because we had already been finished playing by this point. So last note I wanted to mention, a couple rumors about Inter Miami's preseason for 2026. Looks and sounds like they might be heading to South America for their preseason tour, potentially on the verge of finalizing a preseason friendly with Barcelona in Ecuador, home of Alan Obando, and that would be intriguing if he was on the other team for that game. And then America de Cali in Cali, Colombia. So a game in Ecuador, a game in Colombia. If you guys remember this past year, we went down to Panama and Central America. So that could be really interesting, more fun as we get a month into the off season and we are missing our team and we get to start thinking about when we'll get to see them next. But for now, that's it. So guys, I'm going to end it there. Thank you again to Sora and Danny and Chris for finding a way to join us today. And thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Remember to be thankful for all the wonderful people in your lives and all the great things that you guys get to enjoy and be a part of. And I'm certainly very thankful that we get to do the Dry Pink Dialogue and you guys all want to be a part of this and are in the chat and the comment section and interacting with us, because it is such a joy and blessing and it's so fun. So I really appreciate it, guys. Hope you have a wonderful day. And we will see you, as always, 1 hour before kickoff as Inter Miami takes on NYCFC, as I'm about to say, the conference final with a trip to the MLS Cup on the line. But until then, have a lovely night. See you guys then. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.